Do you have a message for the climate change skeptics and the big oil people?
Well, as far as climate change skeptic, I mean, I believe in the scientific method, and one should have a healthy skepticism of things in general. And if you approach things from a scientific standpoint, you always look at things probabilistically, not definitively. And so I think a lot of times, if somebody's a skeptic in the science community, what they're really saying is that they're not sure that it's 100% certain that this is the case. But that's not the point. The point is that is look at it from the other side. So what do you think the percentage chance is of this being catastrophic for some meaningful percentage of the Earth's population? Is it greater than 1%? Is it even 1%? If it is even 1%, why are we running this experiment?
Right,
because
you called it a Russian roulette. We're playing Russian roulette with the atmosphere.
We're playing Russian roulette, and as each year goes by, we're loading more rounds in the chamber. Mm-hmm. It's not wise. Mm-hmm. So that's and what makes it super insane is that we're going to run out of oil anyway. Like, it's not like there's some infinite oil supply. We're going to run out of it. So we know we have to get to a sustainable means of transportation no matter what. So why even run the experiment?
Right.
It's the world's dumbest experiment.
Right. Steve Jobs was and is a wonderful Silicon Valley icon. Is he someone that you've admired, and what have you learned from Steve's life and work?
Well, he's certainly someone I've admired. Although I did try to talk to him once at a party, and he was super rude to me. But I don't think it was me. I think it was sort of, off the course.
I think you weren't the first.
Yeah, not the first. No. It was, yeah, and I was actually there with, like, Larry Page is an old friend of mine. I've known Larry since before he got venture funding for Google, and Larry was the guy that introduced me to Steve Jobs. So it's not as like I'm going like and tugging on his coat, like, please talk to me. But so I was introduced by Larry Page. It's not bad. So. I mean, he obviously was an incredible guy and made fantastic products. And I don't know, there was like a certain the guy had a certain magic about him. Just sort of that was really inspiring. So I mean, I think that's really great.
Is there that magic that you try and emulate?
No, I think Steve Jobs is way cooler than I am. So. I think the reality of being president is that you're actually like the captain of a very huge ship and have a small rudder. Because obviously, if there was a button that a president could push that said economic prosperity, you'd be like, they're hitting that button real fast. Full
steam ahead, yeah.
You could measure the speed of light by how fast they press that button, because that's called like the re-election button. So I'm not sure how much the president can really do, but I think I'm generally a fan of like minimal government interference in the economy. Like the government should be kind of like the referee, but not the player. And there shouldn't be too many referees.
Right.
But there is an exception, which is when there's an unpriced externality. Such as the CO2 capacity of the oceans and atmosphere. So when you have an unpriced externality, then the normal market mechanisms do not work, and then it's government's role to intervene in a way that's sensible. And the best way to intervene is to assign a proper price to whatever the common good is that's being consumed. So
you're saying there should be a tax on gas?
There should be a tax on carbon. If the bad thing is carbon accumulation in the atmosphere, then there needs to be a tax on that, and then we can that will and then you can get rid of all subsidies and everything else. And it seems like logical that you should tax things that are most likely to be bad, rather than like that's why we tax cigarettes and alcohol, because those are probably bad for you. Certainly, cigarettes are. And I think currently what we're doing right now, which is mining and burning trillions of tons of hydrocarbons that used to be buried very deep underground, and now we're sticking them in the atmosphere and running this crazy chemical experiment on the atmosphere. And then you've got the oil and gas companies, which have ungodly amounts of money. And you can't expect them to just roll over and die. Like, they don't do that. Actually, what they much prefer to do is spend enormous amounts of money lobbying and running bogus ad campaigns and that kind of thing to preserve their situation. And I was trying to think what would most influence the future, what are the problems that we have to solve. And I actually talked a lot to friends and my housemates and that kind of thing, and dates, which was maybe not the best thing. So, yeah. Actually met a woman I dated briefly in college, who now works at Scientific American as a writer, and she related the anecdote that we went on a date. All I was talking about was electric cars. That was not a winning conversation.
So it was a bit of a monologue, was it?
Yeah, she said the first question I asked her was, "Do you ever think about electric cars?" She said, no, she never does.
So you learn from that. That wasn't the best shut-up line.
Wasn't great. But it has recently it's been more effective.
There you go. I know this man.
Yeah. So when I was thinking of like what I thought would affect the world as a student, it wasn't really from the standpoint of those are the things I'll get involved in. It was kind of more in the abstract. These are the things I think will happen that will affect the world, but not that I will be involved in them. As it turns out, I have. But I always thought that we would make much more progress in space, and it just didn't happen. It was really disappointing. So. Yeah, I was really quite bothered by it. So, when we went to the moon, we were supposed to have a base on the moon. We were supposed to send people to Mars, and that stuff just didn't happen. We went backwards. We got the space shuttle, but the space shuttle could only go to low Earth orbit, whereas Saturn V could go to the moon. Now the space shuttle's gone, and so that just seemed like a really bad thing. So. I thought, well, maybe it was a question of there not being enough attention or will to do this. But this was a wrong assumption. So, but that's the reason for the greenhouse idea. It was the thought was if there could be sort of a small philanthropic mission to Mars. So I was expecting to lose all the money that I invested in that. But if we could send a small greenhouse to the surface of Mars with seeds in dehydrated nutrient gel, and you hydrate it upon landing, and you'd have this great shot of little greenhouse with little green plants on a red background. I thought that would get people excited.
So you literally imagined a photograph inspiring a new
generation?
Yeah,
you've got to sort of imagine the money shot, if you will. So yeah, I think green plants and red background would be that. And people tend to get interested and excited about precedents and superlatives. So this would be the furthest that life's ever traveled, the first life on Mars, as far as we know. And I thought, well, maybe that would result in a bigger budget for NASA, and then we could sort of resume the journey. That was the basic idea.